Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zeus Caravella from ZK Research, and I'm here today with Paul Turner, your VP of Product Management at VMware, now a Broadcom company. Paul, we're going to be talking about private cloud today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Before we get into it, though, can you just give a quick bio on yourself, what you do at VMware?
Thanks, Zeus, and yeah, great to be on with you and of course your whole audience here. So I'm VP of Products in the VCF division. So think of that as the core platform division, where we're looking at all of the virtualization infrastructure that we've delivered for customers for the last 25 years, vSphere at the core of that, and of course, how are we helping customers today implement cloud-based solutions and private cloud solutions with our VMware Cloud Foundation?
Yeah, now, so we're going to be talking cloud, and I think when people say cloud, typically they think of public cloud, hyperscaler, SaaS deployment models. But over the past, particularly in the past year, I've seen a big shift back to private cloud, a lot of repatriation of workloads. I think coming out of the pandemic, a lot of companies almost over public clouded because they didn't really know what else to do. And now they're looking at things and they're trying to figure out exactly the right deployment model. So I have seen a big movement back to private cloud. And I'm curious, is that what you're also seeing? And if so, why are CIOs now considering private cloud?
I think it's definitely happening. We're seeing, let's first put a kind of focus on what does private cloud actually mean? It's really an operating paradigm. It's how can I run my infrastructure with the agility of public cloud services? Because AWS showed us that you can get infrastructure quickly, you can get it easily, you can deploy storage and dynamically configure storage, networking, compute, and deliver application services quicker for developers. But you've got to do that with the same level of cost control that you can do within an IT organization. So private cloud is about that. It's about how do I deliver you an agile IT environment. Whether you deploy it into your data center or into public services, I can give you a faster IT environment, agile infrastructure for your developers, and we can do it much more cost effectively. And you've done that by automating the software-defined data center effectively, which VMware has talked about for quite a while. But it really comes down to you've got to virtualize your entire infrastructure to actually deliver a private cloud properly, and then it gives you the security and the agility that you need for running your applications and driving your business.
Yeah, so while there's a lot of interest in private cloud, getting from where companies are with their traditional IT operating model to private cloud isn't always the most obvious path. And so I'm curious, in your conversations, CIOs, how are they mapping this journey to private cloud out?
So a lot of the times customers have to first kind of do that assessment of their own kind of internal needs. And many times we're seeing customers at different levels of need. Certain customers have already gone and implemented up on public cloud services, but they're seeing cost controls, costs go out, to an extreme level. So they're looking at how can I repatriate? And we can help them with that in terms of automatically migrating services and workloads back and still delivering the agile experience that they want. But many other customers, when they look at assessing their infrastructure, they see that they're not able to deliver security or patches quickly, or they're not able to update their environment, or their developers are complaining about, I'm not getting services delivered as quickly as I would like to see. So you've got to understand those aspects of, is the biggest challenge I have, is it cloud agility and delivery of workloads and delivering services quicker to my customers? Is it a challenge of I need to drive security and governance and better ability to keep up with, to mitigate risk inside my environment from viruses and threats? So what we expect customers to kind of do is go through a cloud maturity assessment. And that cloud maturity assessment kind of looks at those aspects of, is my biggest pain points kind of on the security and compliance area? Is the biggest pain point around my agility? Or is it actually about my infrastructure and operational efficiency? Which are the areas that will best be the areas I want to focus on? Because addressing those is going to give you the highest return. And understanding those to begin with is the way that you should start.
Now, I know VMware has a cloud maturity assessment.
Right.
And I'm curious as to, as you've taken your customers through that, what are some of the findings that, or some of the ahas, I guess, that as they go through it, they discover?
So one of the, we separate the cloud maturity assessment into two major buckets, kind of the business needs and then the operational needs, or really, technical and non-technical, or non-technical, the business side, and then the technical side of things. So what we see on the non-technical side of things is customers often don't have a very good governance over what are their rules and policies and operational processes. And also the way that if they look at the touch points inside in their orgs of how do they deliver infrastructure and how many different teams and infrastructure teams do they need to actually, to implement an infrastructure, how many teams need to be involved, that becomes quite enlightening to customers because they see that they're quite operationally inefficient, and you could get much more efficient organizationally to be able to deliver better. And that's on the non-technical side. And of course, the governance and rules around their policies and adherence to those policies. But the second is the technical side. And we often see customers who've, built on virtualization. Virtualization's in every data center and widely adopted and high return for customers because they're able to over provision and get the best capacity utilization of their servers. But what we also see is many times they've actually given infrastructure out to companies and they've whitelisted infrastructure, which means it's protected and isolated off. And you don't have very efficient IT orgs if what you have is people holding onto capacity and not getting the benefits of virtualizing that environment. So operational views where we can actually show you the capacity utilization, the underutilization of that, and how you can drive up utilization makes a big difference. So I think there's both the technical aspects of how we can improve utilization I just mentioned. We also look at the security and, are you able to patch? Are you running compliant infrastructure? Can you update and lifecycle your systems at scale with fleet level operations? This is the aspects we look at on the technical side. On the non-technical side, we look at your policies and governance and rules and also organizational practices. Are you implemented in the most efficient way? And usually it's quite enlightening. It's a very simple process that we go through with customers.
Yeah, I'm curious when you go through these with customers, and just for some background, before I was an analyst, I was actually at a reseller, and we had maturity models for everything. And as we walk customers through it, what I tend to find was that the customer's opinion of their own readiness was higher than it actually was. So if you were just to ask them where they think they'd score on the maturity model, they would score themselves higher than they were actually ready for. And then when you walk them through it, they'd understand where the gaps are. And I'm curious with this, are you finding the same things, or customers maybe not quite as ready as they think they are?
I think that's the benefit of maturity assessments, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that it's always good for you to kind of ask yourself kind of the outside in questions. It's always helpful just as you develop as people. It's good that you get people kind of, just kind of asking open-ended questions from you, targeted questions, but around to really see what your real answer is to these things. And that's what the maturity model assessment does, is it really helps people kind of in a very systematic way walk through kind of prescribed questions that we've seen as best practices. And it's built out by best practices for the best leading companies of the world who've implemented private cloud infrastructures with VMware. And it applies to any infrastructure, honestly. It is not just VMware-based infrastructure, but how do you deliver agile, secure, private cloud environments with the lifecycle and operational benefits that we all expect so that you can run it with fewer people? That needs to be done through, we prompt those questions to really see how mature you are as an IT org. So it's kind of like a little benchmark test. Relatively simple to do.
When it comes to technology deployments, and cloud certainly fall in this camp, I find and I'm part of the analyst community, so I'd be careful what I say, I suppose, but the analysts in media often overreact to certain technologies and say everything's moving to the cloud or everything's moving wireless, whatever, and lo and behold, that doesn't happen, right? There's different use cases for different, technologies, and I think cloud is exactly that way. There are some things best done in public cloud, there's some things best done in private cloud, and some things best done hybrid. And so when you talk to customers and they're thinking about doing private cloud, what are some of the use cases or even business outcomes that they're looking for that's driving this interest in private cloud today?
Yeah, so I think I touched on that very briefly at the very beginning, but cloud taught us a lot. The one thing that happens in IT is we have these new kind of waves of innovation that come out of different phase of IT, and cloud was a wave of virtualization, was a wave of innovation. Cloud is a wave of innovation. With every one of these, though, we learn from it and we do better. And what cloud has taught us is actually the developer agility and the application agility so that developers can run more independently of IT and actually use more API and prescriptive driven infrastructure is actually very powerful because it allows us to actually innovate faster and deliver business value quicker. So what private cloud is about how can you can actually do that in your data center or on anyone else's public data center, actually on top of our infrastructure. But we can give you that level of agility so that you've got API-driven infrastructure or desired state infrastructure for developers, Kubernetes-based or standard virtualization-based. It looks at the operational side of, are you implementing operationally efficient infrastructure? And that means, how do I keep my people costs low so that they can scale and run more infrastructure at scale? And then the last thing it looks at is really the security and compliance side of things. Am I secured and protected? And have I set up my networking and my configurations in my storage in a secure and provisioned way? Or it also looks at if things do go wrong and I need to recover, have I set my most business critical applications? Do they have a recovery path? And am I able to recover from ransomware threats that may attack me in the future? You need to be ready for all those things.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I was at Black Hat earlier this month, and I think because of CrowdStrike and some other things, disaster recovery and business resiliency actually has become a pretty hot topic again. And it's funny, we go through these waves where people don't really think about it, they take it for granted, and something happens. And so I could see that really being a big catalyst now for private cloud, being able to recover your infrastructure pretty quickly. So now, with that being said, if companies are thinking about building the private cloud, what are some of the core capabilities you think they need?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would do, and we can help them with this, is do a maturity assessment.
Yeah.
Follow a cloud maturity assessment. You can do that with us. You can do that, I'm sure. They could do their own kind of maturity assessment, but look at it from the perspective of how operationally efficient am I? What agility do I have for my developers and my application users? Can they get my infrastructure as quickly as they can? And then does it follow the governance and rules and security and compliance needs that I have as an organization? Because at the end of the day, it's your data, it's your governance, it's your environment that you need to manage. Whether you're running it on a public cloud or not, you're responsible. So I would say go through that assessment. We also can help customers in terms of, we've got fast track capabilities to actually help people implement. So depending on what you assess out of that, you look at, hey, I want to actually improve my operational efficiency in my life cycle and bring in new fleet management tools. We can do that to help customers implement and operationalize that. And in VMware Cloud Foundation, which actually is a complete suite of products that actually gives you all of the cloud infrastructure that you need and the automation that you need, we actually make it very easy now for existing vSphere customers to migrate over. We call it brownfield import, but basically to be able to take advantage of all the fleet lifecycle that's built into VMware Cloud Foundation. Dead easy for customers to do it. And you don't need to build new infrastructure. It's import what you have.
Yeah, now you've partially answered this question, but there are lots of private cloud stacks out there. Well, not lots. There's some, and I know VMware has had VCF now for quite some time. And so, why VCF for private cloud? And what do you think its competitive differentiators are?
Yeah, so I think Cloud Foundation. I think you've got the leading software-defined virtualization or compute virtualization, the leading software-defined networking with NSX capability, the leading software-defined storage with vSAN, integrated into one product set with full automation, full operational management, full capacity planning, chargeback rules, tenancy model, all built into one kind of integrated platform, including migration tools so that you can migrate services on-prem into the cloud. So it's got all the infrastructure pieces you need. It's got the ability licensing wise where you can deploy it into your data center, or I can actually run that same operating model up on any public cloud. So you can run it on AWS, you can run it on Google, you can run it on Azure, you can run it on all of our service providers out there, your regional service providers. So we've got a very extensive network. So that same environment, and the benefit of it's the same environment, it means you mentioned hybrid. I can easily then take applications and services and just decide HCX, migrate them up onto the cloud, and I can run them there, and you can run things back in your data center. So you've got that flexibility and choice. So VCF is an integrated set of all of the products. The good news with Broadcom forced all our divisions together and said, you're going to deliver a better cloud experience for customers. You're going to deliver on agility. You're going to deliver on a better secure platform. So we forced what was inside in VMware, different operating units, force them now into actually one VCF unit, and it's making a difference in terms of the product.
Yeah, I've noticed that, I guess as the pendulums tend to swing, years and years ago, we had a lot of integrated systems, and then people wanted to disaggregate everything. And then as we disaggregated everything, nobody could deploy anything because putting it back together was too hard. And so now there's been this big pivot back to engineered systems and integrated systems. And I think they really do have a lot of value, especially in markets that are still emerging. So now, if you think about the VMware's core strength, which is vSphere, in fact, I'm not sure I know any enterprises that don't run vSphere. So given that that's largely the platform that you'd be working with, what is the transition path like going from vSphere to VCF full stack, and how do you suggest customers go about that path?
So the nice thing is we've kind of integrated a couple of tools to make this very easy. We've integrated in HCX. It's available with the VCF license. This HCX basically helps you do bulk migration of workloads with no downtime. So you're able to migrate workloads, move workloads in your environment or not. The second is we focus on brownfield adoption, I mentioned, which means that when you now implement 5.2 release, which is our latest release of product, you can just point it to existing environments that may be vSphere-based environments or vSAN-based environments, and you will automatically get all of the fleet management that comes with VCF. It's what we call SDDC Manager. Horribly confusing name, but think of it as just better lifecycle features just for free. So just by upgrading the product, pointing at the existing environment and saying, there, manage it for me. So there's some very easy onboarding paths for customers. Then you can take the next step to see, hey, there's a lot of value features in there. I'd recommend then you go through kind of a maturity assessment of your IT org and say, what is the area that's most useful for me to optimize? Is maybe my storage is an inefficient and costly space for me? Is my networking and my securing of my networks and my overall resilience to threats, is it at the level that I want or not? Or is it, like I said, on operations? Do I feel like I'm operationally inefficient in terms of an IT org? Focus on the area that you want to work on, and then look at optimizing that tool set, that part of it. So you focus simple maturity assessment and then look at implementation of that part of the stack. But that's what I would recommend people do. But easy brownfield is very important to start. Make it easy.
It's all inefficient though. That's why VMware's had so much success with virtualization.
Well, that's what we want to make the whole data center efficient, right? We virtualized compute and we made compute servers efficient. It's now about making the entire data center efficient and making the cloud efficient.
Well, especially in this AI era, right? Everything has to work together, or you're going to wind up spending an awful lot of money on certain parts of your infrastructure, not really getting the bang for the buck for it. So, all right, Paul, is there anything else you want to add?
No, it's actually very good to catch up, and I think with customers, VMware is here to stay. VMware is here to actually make that next leap. We've 25 years ago, helped everybody virtualize their compute environment. Our focus very much now is on virtualizing the data center and providing a private cloud experience for customers. And that private cloud can run anywhere. So we're ready for that next level. We're bringing together our products, which needed to be brought together. We had not integrated our products well enough. That's a big change. And we're there ready to help customers and any of your customers out there.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you talk to IT pros and IT leaders about what they're looking for their IT infrastructure, all roads lead to cloud. The question, though, is what kind of cloud, right? And so public cloud is not always the right answer. And more, I'm seeing a lot more private cloud. So,
yeah. Well, the neat thing about this is you can run on our software infrastructure and then decide what my deployment paradigm is separately. Do I deploy in my data center or do I deploy on a public cloud? So what's interesting is you've now effectively virtualized the cloud because you now can run in your data center or up in a public cloud service. It's your choice. And you have the portability.
Well, I think that's the whole concept of hybrid multi-cloud, right? And I think that's coming. And I think it'll be, here sooner than most companies realize it. But I think to get there, they need to have this this foundation, this cloud foundation in place, or they're trying to deploy it in silos has never worked, and it's certainly not going to work in this use case.
Yeah, and get the simple maturity assessment done.
Yeah. On behalf of Paul Turner from VMware, a Broadcom company, I'm Zeus Caravallo from ZK Research, and thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast.